Welcome to the second webinar in our series of the Parent Hub webinars. We're focusing on protecting teens on a night out and socialising over the summer. We know that teens will have more free time and maybe more independence during the school holidays, and so they need our guidance more than ever to help them navigate decisions and decision making. We are aware that their executive functions are still developing in their brain, and so decision making can sometimes be a bit tricky or a bit challenging. So reflecting on the message from our previous webinar, the importance of having substance use conversations with your child, helping them to prepare to make decisions, and giving the time to address this topic is absolutely essential. It helps to build their moral compass and their decision-making ability around scenarios relating to substance use. On our webinar series clip here, you'll see some of the relevant statistics from the Planet Youth survey of over 5,000 15 to 16-year-olds in Mayo, Galway and Roscommon. The Planet Youth data provides us with information on factors proven to be impactful around reducing substance use amongst young people. Things like screen time, exposure, sleep quality, things like staying out late, etc., where there's potentially reduced supervision or likely more opportunity for exposure to substance use, as well as more influence from peers and other external sources. The ethos of our overall webinar series is empowering parents, acknowledging and verifying and reminding you that you're a very important resource to your child. You're the number one influence, and the Parent Hub is designed specifically to support you around this parenting role in relation to substance use and your child. So really important that we're coming back to the role we have as parents and the significance of supportive conversations with our children and teens around substance use. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we'll be looking at protecting your teen on a night out and how to help them prepare for that night out, looking at harm reduction and some protective factors we can build in, which are very basic. A lot of it's common sense in terms of what we would ordinarily do on a night out, like planning lifts to and from events, for example. But we look at that in a little bit more detail, particularly pertaining to young people and nights out. We'll be providing an overview of some of the risks involved on nights out, and we'll be looking at the HSE Parents Guide on Drugs and Alcohol, which provides a 6-step guide to protect your child against substance use, and lots of other really useful material there in that resource. You'll find that resource sitting on our Parent Hub and also on hse.ie, and we'll be highlighting those referral spaces or signposting those resources going forward. We'll be talking about that big question, what about drinking at home? Or what about if they come home under the influence of substances, with questions or concerns that they might have around the area of drugs and alcohol. The hse.mychild.ie launched a campaign this week that uses the slogan "Aim for connection, not for perfection." So we know that there is no such thing as perfect parenting. We're aiming for connection here and really focusing on that link we have with our teen, and our teen on an individual basis. We might have other children in the household, but given that time one-on-one to each individual child at an age and a stage appropriate level to them. Our Teenage Years Parents Guide to Protecting Yourself on a Night Out PDF, which you'll find on our Parent Hub and on our main wrdatf.ie website, carries this resource that looks at when our teens go out at night and some of the really important factors we might need to be considering. So as we glance through this, we'll notice things like making sure that they have a phone with them, that the phone is charged up and there's credit in it, if credit needs to be, and making sure that there's a boundary or an expectation around answering phone calls when mum or dad, parent or guardian carer calls them. And that's a strict, agreement that they will answer a call or a text when you make contact with them. They keep an eye on their phone and they keep a communication channel open with the parent or guardian. Things like having an in case of emergency number there, making sure that they've eaten a meal, that they're keeping their energy up, that they're sustaining the energy throughout the event or the late night or the festival or the party. Often these situations are new occasions for young people, and sometimes there can be nervousness. They might have butterflies in their tummy for the day. They might be excited about going out, and they may not have had the opportunity to eat their ordinary regular meals like lunch or dinner or tea. So sometimes people can experience weakness and other physical health issues in relation to that. So just making sure that they've eaten. If they're not able to eat before they go out, that they bring a snack with them to have on the way or when they get to their destination, and that they're looking after their overall health. They're hydrated and they're resourced for the late night if it's a late night out celebrating. Reminding your child that they can contact you or another responsible adult at any stage during the event. If they decide that they want to go home, if they feel uncomfortable in a situation, it's absolutely okay for them to call at any stage and say, I'm sorry, Mum, Dad, I've changed the home time, but I need to get out of here now. Will you come and collect me? And that they know they'll get a response at the end of the phone in relation to that it's always okay to change your mind if you feel unsafe. And that you can always call an adult or a parent for help. The big important factor here, I suppose, staying together on a night out, not wandering off, not going on your own, that you're going to be with friends that you trust, and there are safeties in numbers. And unfortunately, in our community, we do have to look out for vulnerable young people. Unfortunately, there may be a cohort of people who are who vulnerable young people out on their own at an event may be a target for whatever reason. So we're encouraging people not to be bringing excessive amount of valuables out with them, to be mindful of the money and the spending or the cards available to them, and to stick with each other, to not leave themselves in an exposed or vulnerable situation where they may potentially be a target for someone else. I introduce you to the HSE Ask About Alcohol and Drugs Parents Guide, which is a booklet resource. It's quite a comprehensive booklet, and we're just flagging one element out of it now, which is the 6 steps to protect your child against substance use. This resource is available on hse.ie, on healthpromotion.ie, and on our WRDATF Parent Hub webpage. So we would really encourage you to access that in your own time and have a look at it in more detail. But there are a few key elements of it that I'm going to highlight to you now. So the first 6 steps are building a close relationship with your child, setting boundaries and sticking to them. We all know that boundaries don't work unless there are consequences attached. So it's really important that we're making realistic, achievable consequences that are fair to and relative to the offence, and that they are things that we're able to stand over and follow through on. Knowing where your child is, what they're doing, and where they are is vitally important. You as a parent have a full duty of care for your child. When teens are under the age of 18, they're minors in the eyes of the law. Even when they're tipping on to 17 and they look quite big and quite strong and quite independent, and their independence is growing all of the time. Of course, the trust is growing all the time from parent to child as well, but it's still really important that you're clued in about their whereabouts. And during the summer months, when school is out on the school holidays and lifestyles are busy, it can be a little bit harder to know maybe where they are, to stay on top of all this. But it's really important that we're putting a concerted effort into knowing where our child is, what they're doing, and who they're with. Not giving alcohol to children under 18 is fundamentally important, and we're going to look at this and some of the reasons why in a bit more detail just coming up. And if you drink it yourself at home, that you're setting a good example by taking a low risk approach, and that you're mindful of the access and the exposure to substances in your home. We're encouraging you to talk openly and honestly about the risks of using drugs and alcohol with your child. And that's a summary of the 6 steps of the HSE Parent Alcohol and Drug Guide. So this resource also highlights what things we can do to try and build those protective factors with our child. So working on our relationship, realizing that mum or dad has their back, that even though we might fall in and fall out, that you're their number one go-to if they need to seek support or help at any time. Learning how to handle conflict is a very important element, and there's lots of support services and resources that we have access to around dealing with arguments and conflicts, dealing with child to parent violence, and non-violent engagement is a really important element here too. giving a little but not giving up. So establishing the level of independence and freedom that your child has over the summer months, boosting their self-esteem. We know that confidence and trust is growing all the time through teenage years, and that's wonderful, but not to turn a blind eye or just to give in, just to keep the peace in scenarios, making sure that we're clear about where they are and who they're with, and that their safety is our number one concern, that's a priority we must uphold and keep as parents, and it's something that is vitally important. And having belief and faith in yourself. And I suppose that's the ethos of our entire Parent Hub series is around supporting parents to believe in themselves, empower parents further, know that you are believing that you are their number one resource, and what you say and do really does have an impact, really does go in and is extremely relevant. So we're asking parents to be proactive around this whole topic and plan in advance of nights out and of social occasions. So agree what is going to happen if the rules are broken in relation to setting boundaries and consequences. Try to make consequences that are relative to the situation, that are not too harsh, but are realistic and fair, and are also achievable. So there are some examples given here around fair consequences. If a child comes home late, that they might have to come home at an earlier curfew time the next time. They don't answer their phone when they're out, that they might have to stay in for a while or maybe be grounded, etc. So your role as a parent is ultimately the most significant thing in your child's life at the moment. And there's strong evidence that knowing what your child is doing, where they are, can prevent underage drinking and substance use taking place. So reiterating that role of a parent around what you can do, getting to know their friends and their family, their other children's parents, who they'll be with when they're out, checking in on location, checking in on parameters around substance use. Don't assume that other parents have the same moral framework as you, because they don't. We're all individual in that. It's important to have those conversations and check in, making sure that if it's an overnight, that you're really getting the details of that information, and that you're checking in on exactly what's happening with your child. Watching out for money and spending, and sometimes money can be an indicator of overspending or potential spending on unwanted things like substances when money starts to dwindle down. So just keep a watch on that, what your child has access to and what they're spending their money on. Keep an eye out for signs like taking rucksacks or bags to parties, alcohol going missing from your home, etc. can also be indicators that alcohol use might be commenced. And keeping alcohol and medicines, other substances locked up and locked away from young people is some good advice. When it comes to parties and discos, you really need to have a conversation around this and take the time to decide if you're happy for your child to go to the party or disco, and don't give in to peer pressure around that. Often, we might hear things like everyone's going, everyone's doing it, I'm the only one that isn't. Check in with the other parents and families, do your homework on it, see who is and isn't going. Often they can be myths that will be, positioned for an opportunity to get going. So just to be clear on that and make sure we're checking that out, and we're being comprehensive and checking into the background of all of these situations. Again, keeping a good rapport or open communication with other parents is a great way of managing this piece. Remember that it's illegal to give anyone under the age of 18 alcohol without parental consent and parental supervision on a one-to-one basis in a family home. So outside of the family home, in public premises, it's illegal for anyone under the 18 to be using alcohol, and it's illegal for you to give another child alcohol in your home. If you can, try to avoid pre-drinks or encouraging drinking of any sort before they go out. So when it comes to that big question of, is it okay to let teenagers drink at home? Well, back to, I suppose, just to reiterate what we've just covered. But when it comes to alcohol in the house, we know that alcohol is a depressant, sedative drug. It's a neurotoxin. It's carcinogenic. And we know that there's no safe level of alcohol use for anyone at any time. and that's factual information. So when it comes to teenagers, we know that their brain is still growing and developing. We know that their executive functioning is still developing. We know that it's a crucial time for them to keep a clean and healthy environment inside and outside their body for organ and brain development. They're still growing right up to 25 to 27 years of age, particularly the frontal lobe of our brain. And it's really important that we're protecting those body parts and allowing for healthy natural growth into adulthood in an alcohol and drug-free environment. In relation to this question, it's around knowing what alcohol you have in the home, what's available to them, what's moving, if it's moving. We must ask ourselves what's the incentive around this, what would be the purpose of letting them or allowing them to drink alcohol at home, for whose benefit, and what do we expect to happen. We know that young people who are given alcohol by parents and then going out, that it's just a starter, that it's just a top up really to get them going, as opposed to that they're only going to have that drink with you and then not drink further drinks when they go out. We know you're giving them a head start around their alcohol consumption. We know that tolerance is often an issue for teens, as they mightn't have had exposure to substance use before, and often a small amount can have quite a big impact when they go out at night. And we notice this all the time when it comes to events where young people are having medical issues or medical emergencies, because the quantity of alcohol that they have drank, although it might seem small in quantity to some, can have a really impactful effect on the body, and that can be quite quickly, and it can be quite overpowering when it happens. So we see young people who get drunkenness very, very quick and get quite intoxicated, and need assistance around that. As mentioned before, don't assume that other parents have the same morals and values as you do around alcohol. Please ask them their views and collaborate on that. Teenagers are often unaware of their alcohol limits, again down to tolerance and lack of experience. So that's another factor to consider. And are we sending mixed messages in relation to the law? The law states that young people cannot be drinking under the age of 18, and then we are allowing alcohol use in the home or introducing alcohol use at an earlier stage. So the message is very, very clear from us in the Drugs Task Force that we are encouraging delaying the onset for as long as possible. We do not encourage the consumption of alcohol in the home by minors. We're conscious and aware that growth and development is still occurring and their brains have not reached cognitive maturity yet, and we know that young people who start using substances, any psychoactive substances, before the age of 15 are on average 4 times more likely to develop dependency issues in adulthood. So that is something we certainly want to avoid, and the message is very, very clear around this, that we delay the onset for as long as possible into teenage years. So when teens come home and they may be under the influence, it's really, really important to be prepared. It's good to check for substance use signs and symptoms and be mindful around it. And obviously there's a given level of trust here with your teen. So we are acknowledging that and understanding and encouraging that. However, it is important to be alert and aware of some of the elements that we might need to be looking out for. So if there is alcohol on board, checking for safety is essential. Is medical help needed in this scenario? Have they got underlying conditions that may be affected? And does this need attention? So we're going to encourage you to stay calm, keep them calm and safe, and only offer sips of water if they need a drink. To stay with them at all times and observe for other substance use as well as you go along. And it's okay to ask them, to maybe even contact or ask their friends if other substances have been involved, if they are under the influence and you need to do so. Looking out for the signs of substance use, knowing the signs, and knowing when and where to get help is really important. And then following up around the conversation the next day is fundamental. So we don't get very far when we're confrontational in a situation like this, when substances are on board, maybe the alcohol has been taken. So really we're going to hold off on those chats until the next day. where we can follow up, where we can look at the consequences and look at reasserting the position of safety with our child when they do go out on future occasions. And we have resources on our Parent Hub to support you further around this topic in terms of staying calm, what to look out for, and how to follow up. Really important too that we're staying with them overnight and observing them if there's substance use on board, that we don't just tuck them off into bed and leave them to it, that they're monitored throughout the night for safety. And if there's a friend with them under the influence as well, you must contact the person's parent immediately to inform them of the situation. You cannot carry the duty of care for a child who is intoxicated. You must pass that on to another parent or guardian for attention. So in relation to the risks of other substance use, it's important to acknowledge that buying contaminated drugs is always an ongoing issue. We know that there are no guarantees, there are no governance or licensing that happens with recreational drugs. It's always going to be a gamble in terms of our mental health, and it's always going to be a gamble in terms of what we are getting. Having the risk of a severe reaction is always present. The risk of accident, potential injury or death under the influence is also a significant concern, and of course the risk of becoming involved with the law. On the right you'll see our Fancy Backpacking Abroad Forget It campaign, which focuses on protecting your dreams and making your own decisions, and it looks at some example dreams like, surfing on Bondi Beach in Sydney, walking around Times Square in New York, and it uses the examples to highlight the fact that having a minor drug conviction can stop you from ever reaching these goals. So it looks at the kind of focusing on the legal and the travel implications around substance use and involvement with the law. Of course, a criminal record can affect us from reaching our potential in terms of hobbies and interests and travel. Really important elements like our character referencing, guarded vetting, and all of these elements for pre-clearance for travel can be sabotaged when there is a criminal record. Back to that parenting role, remembering that you're the most important, powerful resource and role model in your teenager's life. Being conscious of your own attitudes and behaviours around alcohol and drug use and the storage of alcohol and substances in your home. You have a significant influence on your child. This role and duty of care is fundamental to their development, and encouraging having those conversations to build that element of support, to build the approachability around this topic is something we cannot reiterate enough. We know that when parents create supportive, nurturing environments for their children ultimately make better decisions. And over on our Parent Hub at wrdatf.ie, you'll notice that the Parent Hub offers the opportunity to connect you to information and services in the west of Ireland. It's designed under the age areas of preteen, teenagers and over 18, so adult children, to resource you in your parenting around substance use. It covers the sections prevention, early intervention and support and treatment, so you can best choose which area suits you best in terms of the information that you require at the time. On the Parent Hub, we also have the Tackle module, again, encouraging you around this area of having a conversation with your child in a more in-depth way. So it's a self-directed module that you can have a look at and a click through to help resource yourself around these conversations. There's lots of other resources over on the Parent Hub, so please do feel free to take some time to look around to find what you need and to revisit it at appropriate stages and ages throughout teenage development. So key messages from this webinar are that it's really important for you to help your teen prepare for socialising. We cannot assume that it's something they naturally have within their skill set. We know that the executive functioning of their brain is still growing and developing, as is their moral compass. So they need our guidance, they need our support to be able to navigate the social environments that they're moving into as they age with more independence and with trust. We acknowledge that the parents' attitude around substance use is very important, and we see these cross-contabulations more evident than ever before in our Planet Youth data. When we look at parents' attitudes and equate that with actual behaviour around alcohol, we can see how significant it is in terms of the influence it is on the child. It's really important to put boundaries in place and to follow through on the boundaries. So the consequences are as important as the boundaries themselves. A boundary without consequence just negates credibility. Remember the importance influence of your role as a parent and your duty of care to under 18s who are minors in the eyes of the law. Be conscious of the legal consequences and risks that are there, and delaying substance use for as long as possible is the best thing you could do for developmental outcomes for your child. Some useful links that we mentioned as we were going through the webinar are referenced here for you. And our next webinar is coming up on July 23rd, 2025 at 8 p.m, a short webinar in the webinar series, just a 30-minute information session for you as parents, and you'll find all links to that over on wrdatf.ie. A recording of our previous webinar talking with your child about drug and alcohol you can find on our YouTube channel and on our Parent Hub. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. Please do follow up. The best place to stay updated is following our social media platforms online, our Instagram handle, which is WestRDATF, our Western Region Drug and Alcohol Task Force Facebook page, our YouTube channel, WRDATF video channel, or on our website, www.wrdatf.ie.